A terrible story from the hotel. Hey there, folks. So, I've got a wild story to share with you all today. A tale that still gives me chills every time I think about it. Buckle up, because this is going to be a deep dive into one of the most perplexing and unsettling experiences I've ever had. It all started when I decided to take a spontaneous trip. No itinerary, no reservations, just me and the open road. I was aiming to disconnect from the usual grind and maybe find some inspiration for my next project. Little did I know, I'd stumble upon an enigma wrapped in a mystery at an old hotel. Arrival at the hotel. As dusk approached, I found myself driving along a remote stretch of road flanked by dense forests on either side. The GPS signal was intermittent, and my fuel gauge was flirting with empty. Just as I began to worry, I spotted a sign partially obscured by overgrown vines. Bailey's Grand Hotel, Est, 1895. An old hotel in the middle of nowhere? Sounds like an adventure, I thought. Pulling into the gravel driveway, the hotel's grandeur and decay became evident. The Victorian-style architecture featured intricate woodwork and towering turrets, but time had certainly taken its toll. The paint was peeling, windows were cracked, and an eerie silence enveloped the place. I walked into the lobby, and it felt like stepping back in time. Antique chandeliers hung precariously from the ceiling, their light bulbs emitting a dim, flickering glow. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and something else I couldn't quite place, perhaps ozone or old varnish. Behind the front desk stood a man who could have been a statue if not for his subtle breathing. "Good evening," he said without a hint of emotion. His name tag read, Walter. "I'm looking for a room," I said, trying to sound casual despite the odd vibes. He glanced up, his eyes meeting mine briefly before darting away. "We have vacancies," he replied, sliding over a dusty registry book. As I signed in, he handed me an old-fashioned brass key attached to a heavy keychain engraved with the number 104. "Your room is on the first floor. Please, use the staircase and avoid the elevator." "Is the elevator out of order?" I asked. He paused for a moment. "It's unreliable," he said tersely. First signs of trouble. Opting to heed his advice, I made my way to the staircase. The red carpet underfoot was frayed, and the banister felt sticky, like it hadn't been cleaned in ages. On the first floor, the hallway stretched farther than seemed possible, given the building's exterior dimensions. "That's odd," I mumbled to myself. The air grew colder, and a faint humming sound became audible, resonating at approximately 50 Hz, a frequency that can cause discomfort and is sometimes associated with infrasound phenomena. Reaching room 104, I noticed the door was slightly open. "Hello?" I called out, pushing it gently. The room was not what I'd expected. Antique furniture filled the space. A four-poster bed, an ornate writing desk, and a wardrobe that looked like it weighed a ton. Everything was coated in a thin layer of dust. Strange occurrences inside the room. I set my bag down and tried to turn on the lamp. It flickered sporadically before settling into a dim glow. On the desk lay a book bound in cracked leather. Curious, I opened it to find page after page filled with indecipherable symbols, perhaps an unknown cipher or a dead language. As an amateur cryptographer, this piqued my interest. I snapped a few photos with my phone to analyze later. That's when I noticed there was no signal, no Wi-Fi, no cellular data. "Figures," I sighed. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the room, ruffling the pages of the book. But the windows were all closed. Then came the whispering, so faint I thought it was my imagination. Leaning in, I tried to catch any words, but it was like multiple voices overlapping, none making any sense. The night unfolds. Deciding to shake off the unease, I left the room to find a staff member and maybe grab some dinner. The hallway was longer than before, impossibly so. I paced for what felt like several minutes, passing identical doors with tarnished numbers that didn't seem to follow any logical sequence. 107, 112, 108. Did I make a wrong turn? I wondered. I turned back, but the corridor stretched on. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, and the ambient temperature dropped further, likely below 15 degrees Celsius. My breath formed mist in the air. Then, I saw her, a figure at the end of the hallway. "Excuse me," I called out, relief washing over me. But as I approached, she didn't respond. Her attire was peculiar, early 20th century dress, complete with a bonnet. As I got closer, she simply wasn't there anymore. Vanished. Encounters with the unknown. Returning to my room seemed like the best course of action. I'll admit, fear was creeping in, but curiosity outweighed it. Back inside, I tried to rationalize the situation. Perhaps the hotel's layout was confusing, and the isolation was playing tricks on my mind. I pulled out my laptop to review the photos of the mysterious book. Applying a frequency analysis on the symbols, I noticed recurrent patterns suggesting a monoalphabetic substitution cipher. Excited, I began decoding. Hours flew by unnoticed. I managed to translate a portion. The souls are trapped, bound by the keeper. Only the outsider can set them free. Well, that's ominous, I muttered. Just then, the lights flickered and my laptop battery died, despite being plugged in. The whispers returned, louder this time. Set us free, they seemed to chant in unison. Desperate escape. Deciding I'd had enough, I packed my things, determined to leave. The hallway was now engulfed in darkness, the light fixtures emitting only a faint glow, possibly below 10 lumens. The laws of physics seemed distorted, the hallways stretched and warped as if in a funhouse mirror. I reached the staircase, but found a brick wall blocking my path. That's impossible. My heart pounded at over 100 beats per minute, a physiological response to acute stress. Attempting to stay calm, I recalled techniques from my time studying psychology, grounding exercises, deep breathing. It helped, but only slightly. The climax. Returning to the corridor, I saw doors swinging open on their own. From each room, spectral figures emerged. Dozens of them, all dressed in attire spanning different eras, Victorian, Edwardian, even as recent as the 1950s. Their faces were gaunt, eyes hollow. At the end of the hall stood Walter, the receptionist. "You shouldn't have tried to leave," he said, his voice echoing unnaturally. His form began to shift, elongating into a grotesque silhouette. "What's happening?" I shouted. "You must take my place," he replied. "The hotel demands a keeper." Breaking free. Remembering the cryptic message from the book, I realized I might be able to break the cycle. I pulled out a small multi-tool from my pocket, never leave home without it, and started prying open the electrical panel on the wall. If I could create a circuit overload, perhaps I could short out whatever energy was trapping the souls here. Locating the main power conduits, old copper wires inconsistent with modern electrical codes, I crossed them, creating a spark. The lights began to strobe erratically. The building shook, and the spectral figures writhed as if in pain. "Release us," they cried. The resolution. With one final surge, the lights exploded, plunging everything into darkness. Silence followed, deep and complete. I awoke the next morning on the floor of the lobby, sunlight streaming through the dirty windows. The hotel was in complete disrepair, worse than before. No staff, no guests, just me. Exiting cautiously, I found my car still parked outside. It started without issue, and I drove until I reached a town. Seeking answers. At a local cafe, I inquired about Bailey's Grand Hotel. The waitress looked at me, puzzled. "That old place burned down in 1928, she said. "People say it's haunted. You're not the first to come asking after spending a night there." She showed me a newspaper clipping from the local archives. The headline read, "Hotel keeper perishes in fire. Guests missing, presumed dead." Conclusion. The logical part of me is scrambling for explanations. Mass hallucination. Perhaps exposure to environmental toxins like mold spores causing psychosis. But the experience was so vivid, so real. Did I somehow tap into a residual energy, a temporal distortion? Quantum physics does suggest the possibility of time being nonlinear under certain extreme conditions, but that's all theoretical. Final thoughts and call to action. What do you all think? Have any of you had experiences that defy explanation? Drop your theories and stories in the comments below. Let's get a discussion going. Maybe together we can make sense of these anomalies. Don't forget to like the video if you found it interesting, and subscribe for more deep dives into the unexplained. Until next time, stay curious and question everything. The screen fades back in to show me unpacking at home. As I open my bag, I freeze. There, sitting atop my clothes, is the old, leather-bound book from the hotel. It shouldn't be there. I look into the camera, a mix of fear and intrigue in my eyes. Looks like the story isn't over yet.